Welcome back, APUSH students. Today is chapter 20 of the American Pageant, titled Girding for War, the North and South. If you don't know the American Pageant, it's fine because the content is still going to be the same. I'm going to be going over all the key terms and notes for this chapter that helped me get a 5, so I encourage you to take notes along as well. Fort Sumter Federal Arsenal in Charleston, South Carolina. The South responded to Northern attempts to supply it with a military bombardment, which caused outrage in the North. This became the first engagement of the Civil War. So the North tried to recapture their federal military arsenals, but the South basically took control of any of those arsenals that resided in, the South. Border states: Missouri, Kentucky, Maryland, and Delaware. The states were mixed between Northern and Southern sentiment, and they were crucial for either side to gain the support of. This caused Lincoln to pursue softer rhetorical campaigns, talking about what the war was only for the Union and not about slavery. Border states dictated decision-making on either side. So these states in between the South and the North, they were critical, just not only on a numbers wise, but just in terms of military strategy. They needed that land. So this kind of moderated a lot of the rhetoric that was coming out of either side. Billy Yank, symbol of a Northern soldier. Billy Yank reflected the typical Northern stereotype of intellectual, practical, and conscientious, and concerned about themselves over the greater issue of war. Johnny Reb, symbol of a Southern soldier. Johnny Reb reflected the Southern societal makeup that typically aligned with toughness, religion, strong emotion and passion, and, of course, a personal connection to the issue of slavery. Wage slaves, poor people in Britain. They were against the slave-owning South and broader aristocratic principles. They kept the British government from intervening on behalf of the South because they protested Southern sympathy. In an attempt to kind of throw chaos into the United States, Britain was sort of leaning towards supplying the South, which obviously would break up America's power heavily. But these people in Britain who were staunchly against slavery, they kept the government from pursuing this. King wheat and king corn, productive crops for the North. They produced an immense supply while the British simultaneously had a bad crop season. This tied the British to Northern exports and therefore funded the Northern economy and abandoned their Southern sympathy. So not only did the British abandonment of any type of Southern intervention come from the people, but also came on these economic issues. Trent Affair, conflict between Union warship and British mailship. The Northern actions of taking prisoners, including Confederate diplomats, almost provoked a war between the Union and the British. Lincoln's patience and skilled diplomacy helped to cool the tension. This is just one of the first of many actions of Lincoln really being critical to the outcome of these events. Laird rams, British building Confederate warships. It was one of the many conflicts that almost sparked war between the Union and Britain, and thus involving Canada. Dominion of Canada helped unite and bolster Canada in 1867. It helped make Canada stronger, thus preventing it from potential American imperialism. It emerged as a strong nation after the Civil War. So any type of northern expansion into Canada was sort of quelled after this. Jefferson Davis, President of the Confederacy. His general unpopularity and stubborn personality created problems for the South and the relationships between bodies of government. The task of keeping the chaotic South organized proved too tough to handle. So Jefferson Davis, as great of a power that he had, he was not very effective in keeping the Confederate States together. Writ of habeas corpus, constitutional protection against unlawful imprisonment. When Lincoln suspended the law, it enabled the Union Army to take more prisoners of war. In the larger scheme, it was another example of Lincoln's borderline authoritarian wartime actions. One of the things that historians look at, one of the narratives historians find in Lincoln's Civil War handling was definitely this slight authoritarianism, and he really took advantage of wartime to kind of impede on rights. New York City draft riots, protests against the federal conscription law. It highlighted the internal battles the North faced upon trying to get people to sign up for the war. It also revealed portions of the population who were against the war, like anti-black Irish immigrants. So although the abolitionist cause was noble, a lot of people weren't willing to go to war for it, and that caused the kind of conscription situation to really spark some conflict in the North. Morrill Tariff Act increased federal tariffs. The increased tariffs helped to gain revenue for the government and also helped to protect American businesses against the new taxes employed to fund the war. At this point, protective tariffs became synonymous with the Republican Party, just like they had with the other conservative parties before. Greenbacks, paper money issued by the government. It was a failed plan by the government as the currency depreciated in value as inflation crept upwards. There was definitely some economic problems in America during the Civil War. National banking system, federal banking system, established banknote currency, paper money. It helped to take steps toward unifying the banking system. It also stimulated and stabilized the inflation and depreciation that had been going on during the war to try and increase that home front economy, home front living situation for people, as obviously a war is a long process. Homestead Act of 1862, free land for westward expansion. It continued the westward expansion movement even throughout the war. 300,000 people moved out west by taking advantage of the Homestead Act, further tying the North and West together. So even during the time of a civil war, the principles of manifest destiny and westward expansion did not die out. That kept going. U.S. Sanitary Commission, organizations that assisted Union armies. It trained women in various skills and not only helped the soldiers, but also further advanced the importance of women in society, which propelled the growing women's movement forward. Obviously, in this moment, abolitionism and slavery was in the forefront, not women's rights, but that doesn't mean they weren't making progress. This also fits in the broader APUSH context of women during the war, women expanding their place in society during wartime. That's a key narrative. Dr. Elizabeth Blackwell, first female physician, organized Sanitary Commission. She helped to organize the important Sanitary Commission, which empowered women and increased their skills and confidence. Clara Barton, Union Army nurse. Her hard work and energy she dedicated to nursing the Union Army advanced nursing into a profession rather than a simple service. She helped to create a vast employment category for women. Obviously transitioning nursing, not just on like a person-to-person service, but into a profession, into a broad job employment opportunity. This gave women access to jobs. And that's a wrap. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next chapter, and goodbye.